What's going on, everybody? Welcome to After Prison Show, and in this video I'm going to be telling you about the 5 most important things I learned while I was in prison. This is also a Q&A video, so with that I will be also answering some pretty awesome questions that were left in the comment section of yesterday's video and the video from the day before that. Thanks to everybody who commented and also left a possible question that could be answered in this video, and I really hope your question is one of those that I will answer. And with all of that being mentioned, let's just go ahead and dive head first into this video. Our first question comes from Programmer Podcast, who asks, what was your biggest fear in prison? Prison is a place that can fill you with all sorts of fear. No matter how tough guys try to act while they are in prison, you can rest assured that every single prisoner locked up has some sort of fears that absolutely scares them to death. For me personally, while I was locked up, I had a lot of fears. What if I didn't survive this? What if somebody killed me while I was in here? What if somebody tried to take my Junie cakes? As much as I laugh and joke about that here on After Prison Show, that is a real thing that could and also does happen. But I think one of the biggest fears that I had was actually getting lost in the system. Supposedly, this is like something that really happens. Maybe it's a prison myth. Maybe it's some sort of prison urban legend. But this is something that you hear about all the time while you are locked up. And there are actually a lot of prisoners who not only believe that this can happen, but also talk about this type of stuff all the time. Getting lost in the system is basically you getting locked up, serving your time. Your release date comes around and nobody knows you're supposed to be getting released. DOC, Department of Corrections, they have no idea who you are, that you're even locked up, or more importantly, when your actual release date is. Somehow your paperwork magically disappears or gets lost, and because of that, you end up spending way more time than you're supposed to actually locked up, or even worse, the rest of your life in prison. Now, I do have to say that I'm not exactly sure how true or even real this is, but I can promise you this is a fear of many a prisoner who is sitting behind bars at this very moment, just as it was a major fear of mine while I was in prison. And to add just a little more to this, I can remember when my release date was literally right around the corner. One of the most important things that you need, if not the very most important thing that you need in order to be released, is what is called a home plan. If you do not have an address that you can provide to the Department of Corrections saying this is where you will be staying, and some sort of parole or probation officer has already gone there and verified that you will be living at that address, you are not going home until that home plan has been verified and they know that is exactly where you are going. Now, a lot of guys who do get released from prison, they don't have an address where they can say that's where they're going to stay after they're released. And in those type of situations, prisoners have to write to halfway houses to try to get accepted into one of those. But the crazy thing about a halfway house is that in a lot of cases, they don't have bed space to accept prisoners coming home from prison. They're already filled up. So if that's the case, if you have no address that you can provide and can't get into a halfway house because they're all filled up, well then guess what? You're not getting released until they can figure out somewhere where they can place you, or until a bed actually opens up in a halfway house. In my case, I actually did have an address that I provided as my home plan. The crazy damn thing about it is that at 3 days until my release, my home plan still had not been approved yet. You want to talk about some fear? 3 days until my release, and they still haven't gotten my home plan situation figured out at all. All I could imagine was that my release date would come, I wouldn't be released because this home plan still hadn't been approved yet. And the reason that I was having all of these troubles with this home plan situation is because once the information was actually passed to the probation office, it was like they didn't even do their job. Somehow they had mishandled my home plan information. And once all of this was realized, my home plan didn't get approved until the very last day before I was to be released. Those were some pretty fearful times. Next up, Cowboy from Hell 77 asks, what were some of the craziest / weirdest habits of your cellmates? Throughout the many years that I spent locked up, I had a lot of different cellmates. Some that were cool, some that were not. Some that I fought, some that I got my ass kicked by. But with the fact that I had so many different cellmates, I certainly had a few that had some pretty crazy or weird habits. I could remember one cellmate in particular who would have night terrors. This was a pretty crazy person to be locked up with, considering the fact that when they were asleep, not only would they talk and yell in their sleep, sometimes this guy would just literally scream for no reason in the middle of the night while he was asleep. Can you imagine being locked in a cell with a guy, and in the middle of the night while you were trying to sleep, all you hear is "Ah!" Well, I'm definitely not going to sleep now. You know, they say everyone has some sort of skeletons in their closet. I just think to myself, what kind of skeletons did this guy have in his closet that he would have these night terrors in the middle of the night that would sometimes cause him to absolutely scream for dear life while he was asleep? I also had another cellmate that I did actually end up fighting. I did not like this guy at all. I was on the bottom bunk, this guy slept on the top bunk, and I can remember I would be laying in my bunk at night, and this guy would literally just peek over the side of the bunk to see whether or not I was still awake or not. Can you imagine laying in your bunk, whether you were reading or maybe listening to music, and all of a sudden you see,
"Oh, hey. I was just seeing if you were still awake."
This really used to creep me out a lot while I was locked in a cell with this guy, wondering to myself, why in the hell is this guy always peeking over the bunk to see whether or not I am awake? And I soon realized it was because this guy was a sleep jerker or a phantom fiddler, whatever you want to call it. This guy would literally wait till I went to sleep just so he could jerk off. And I'll never forget the time that I woke up in the middle of the night to take a piss, got out of my bunk, and this guy was on his top bunk. There's a lot of things that you don't do while locked up. One of which is jerk off while your cellmate is in the cell asleep with you. That is an absolute no-no. That's also a very big sign of disrespect. And when I saw that that is exactly what this guy was doing, I literally grabbed him, threw him off of that top bunk, and without even putting my shoes on, I went straight to his ass. Bang! 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 And by the way, this is actually one of few fights that I actually did win. But the crazy thing about this is that this is one of those situations where I had to fight this guy. Because had I not handled my business in this situation, well then if it ever came out that I didn't do anything about this, well then Joe would have looked like an absolute chump. But you know what? The next day it did come out as to why I had to fight my cellie in the middle of the night, waking everyone up with the COs running in because of all of the hooting and hollering, and me then being taken to the hole for fighting this guy. But even with that, everybody knew Joe did what he was supposed to do. Next up is a question by Mustafa Jack. What's the most significant 5 things you learned while in jail or in prison? Being locked up, and no matter for how much time, you are going to learn things while you are behind bars. And me, myself, I most certainly learned a hell of a lot of things. But if I had to put it into just 5 things that I learned while locked up, well, I'll go ahead and give you 6. Number 1, don't trust anybody. No matter who they are, how cool you think you are, if they're your prison BFF, it does not matter. You cannot trust anybody while you were locked up. This was a lesson that was especially hard for me to learn because while I was locked up, I had a lot of people that I was cool with, people that I did consider friends. But in 99.9% of all of those situations with those individuals who I thought were like really good friends of mine, in the end, they weren't shit at all. 99.9% of everybody in prison is only out for themselves. It is the most cutthroat place you could ever be, full of so many snakes in the grass and also rats. The sooner that you learn that you cannot trust anybody aside from yourself, the better things will be for you. Number 2, keep your eyes open and pay attention to everything that is going on around you all the time. And the reason for this is because in prison, there is always something either going down or getting ready to go down. Whether it's fights, whether it's stealing, whether it's people getting jumped or even stabbed, prison is a place where this happens, and it happens a lot. Number 3, never, ever get comfortable while you are locked up. Prison is not exactly a place where you want to become complacent or comfortable at all. In fact, you will be at your absolute weakest and most vulnerable if you do become comfortable while locked up. Other prisoners can easily spot a guy who is getting way too comfortable behind bars, and in most cases to those other prisoners who may be stalking prey or looking for an easy mark, those guys behind bars who appear to be comfortable in most cases become targets of either getting shit stolen from them, getting robbed, or even extorted, or even worse. You never want to be seen as somebody who is comfortable behind bars, because comfort equals a guard that is down. Number 4, hope. As in, hope is the most important thing that you can have when serving any amount of time at all. Whether it's 5 or 10 days, whether it's 5 or 10 years, or whether it's a life sentence. In prison, hope is the most valuable thing that you could ever have. Because without it, well, everything will just seem pretty fucking hopeless. Hope for whatever. Whether it's hope for one day to be free again, hope to one day accomplish or succeed at this or that, no matter what it is, as long as there is hope attached to it, that is the most important thing that you can have to get through any amount of time you will have to serve in either a jail or a prison. And I have to assure you that it was most certainly hope that got me through all of the time that I served myself. Number 5. Finding something to do while locked up to focus all of your time and energy toward. Whether that is working out, whether that is reading, whether that's furthering your education, whether that's trying to get some sort of a trade, or just putting together plans for yourself of possible ventures that you would like to pursue once you are released. Having something to do and something to focus your time on while you are serving time is most certainly going to make your time a hell of a lot more manageable and also tolerable as well. One thing in particular you do not want to focus on while locked up, especially if you are serving any amount of lengthy time, is the free world. In fact, once you become caged in behind those bars to serve any amount of lengthy time whatsoever, you have to almost absolutely forget about the free world, because that free world is not going to be a part of your life for however much time you are about to serve in that prison. In fact, if the thing that you do choose to focus on while you are serving time is the free world, you can rest assured that your time will not be easy at all, because all you will think about is getting back out there, and every minute will seem like an hour, every day will seem like a week, and every week will seem like a year behind those bars. Focusing on the free world is the absolute last thing that you need to have your mind on when serving time. And number 6, I told you I was going to give you 6 things in this list of 5 things that I learned that were most important to me while serving time. But number 6 is just as important as what any of these things were, and that is, it is what you make it out to be. You can either choose to go through any time that you serve completely miserable, completely hating everything, or you can choose to take that negativity of what it really is, prison, the most negative place you could probably be, and turn that into something positive by focusing on what you can accomplish when you go home and how you can prepare yourself for that while in this situation that you are in. Nobody or nothing in prison is going to make you come out of that situation any better than you went into it, unless it is you yourself actually doing it for you yourself. I had to do it for me throughout 7 years that I just served. Most of those 7 years I went through completely alone and without not a soul in the world to write to, talk to, or come to visit me. But you know what? It was me, myself, who decided I was going to take this negative situation and turn it into something a hell of a lot better. And I think I've done a pretty good job of that thus far. This last question comes from Bellum128. Who asks, if you could speak to your 18-year-old self, what would you say to him, and what would be his likely response? If I could go back and talk to myself at 18 years old, I'm not exactly sure what I would be able to say to myself to actually be able to reach myself at that age. At 18 years old, my mentality was completely different, a total 180 from where my mind actually is now. When I was 18 years old, I was completely wrapped up in this thug life mentality, thinking that I was gonna get it from the streets, committing crimes, selling drugs, doing drugs, drugs, doing all of the wrong shit. And to be honest with you, I don't think there's anything that anyone could tell me at that point that would have reached me. Not even my current self traveling back in time like Quantum Leap or some shit to actually speak with myself at that age. I can remember my dad trying to save me from going down this road that I most certainly was headed down at 18. He said to me, he said, "Joe, just come back home. Get out of these streets." And I can remember exactly what I said to him in response to that. I said, "Dad, this is it for me. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make it and I'm gonna be successful and I'm gonna do it my own way." And all I was able to accomplish from that type of thinking and that type of mentality was spending pretty much my entire 20s in and out of jails and prisons, completely losing the faith, love, and care of my family and them having to turn their back on me because I was such a constant failure. So with that, I'm not actually sure I could tell myself anything that would change the way things were for me at that time. But if I did have the opportunity to go back and speak with myself at that younger age, I guess the main thing that I would try to emphasize is, Joe, this just isn't going to be the way things are going to work out for you. In fact, the only thing that you can look forward to from this is spending pretty much your entire adult life locked the fuck up. You need to get away from these people who you were hanging out with, these people that you think are your friends, because I can assure you, from many years later in the future, they are no longer your friends. They don't care about you now. They most certainly won't care about you later. And the only thing that's going to come from associating with these people is you getting locked up. Is you losing every damn thing that you think is important to you now. It's all going to be gone. Mark my words, it's coming right around the corner. If I could speak to my younger self, I would tell him, Joe, focus on something good. Because I can assure you, coming from the future, focusing on good things in this world will most certainly get you a hell of a lot farther than any of the negative stuff that you think is so cool right now. And to be honest with you, I'm quite sure my younger self probably wouldn't even receive this at all. It would probably go in one ear and completely out the other. Because again, I have to tell you, I'm the type of a person who takes the hardest possible road to learn any type of lesson in life. I'm a complete hardhead, and that's the way that I have always been. And it absolutely took me losing every damn thing that mattered to me, going through so much pain, heartache, hardships, and the worst times imaginable for me to finally wake up and realize that wasn't the right thing to be focusing on at all. Hey, look, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please leave a like and a comment letting me know exactly what you thought about this. I wish I could have answered more questions in this video, but because I didn't, we should do this again real soon. As always, enjoy life, the free world. Never take a moment for granted and make the most of every day. Peace! Let's give a few shout outs, starting with Twitter. DJ Mac, Nitro Gaming, Tanya Tullis, Frosty, and Far Cry. Thanks to all of you for retweeting yesterday's tweet. From Instagram, let's shout out Lil T916, Ben Oakley, Extreme Hand Check, Boss Beecher 16, and Louis Campanga. From yesterday's video, let's shout out Heavy Metal Birthday Cake, Hunker Doodles, Casper Gaming, Harlan Ogden, Josh Cutler, and Vinicius Andre. Thanks to all of you and to everyone else, and until next time, peace!